creative ideas, when really we should be looking in on ourselves as to what we require and what we're actually doing at the moment. I mean, I know of many great projects in the UK, some of which I've covered on my site before, and it seems to me that this whole subject and innovation and trying to bring people over with expensive office buildings, I mean, for me, the internet is the backbone of innovation. It's why we have the internet, which allows us to connect to people all around the world. So why would we want a central place for us to actually physically be anyway? We should be developing the connections via the internet, so we can be creative on a global scale rather than in a single office somewhere in the UK version of Silicon Valley, in a place called Shoreditch, which, after doing a little bit of research, I can't really find anything remarkable about the place apart from it was well known for cabinet making, I believe, a long while ago, and it has one claim to fame of being the first place that has a chap living there that was arrested for damaging Boris Johnson's bike scheme. Apparently, I've read on one of the newspaper websites that he damaged one of their bikes. That is the only thing remarkable about it. And I'm just feeling that we're ploughing money into things where we should be looking at funding projects instead of buildings and mortar. We should be looking at funding projects, and maybe if the government's got.
I should say, it actually leads me to, I've been in a bit of an argument a few days ago with some relatives. There is this belief that people have to go physically to a different place to work. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Roy, can I just interrupt? You cut off for a second there. I couldn't hear who you were in an argument with. Could you just go back?
Okay. I had an argument about, I'm pretty much against this very old notion of having to drive and having to go a very long way to do a certain activity, such as what we call work. Certain things do require you to travel. If you're gardening or if you do a project where you have to visibly see things, it makes there is justification for traveling. But lots of people go to work for the sake of being out of the house, or to being away, or to being under somebody else's supervision. The argument I had was over whether people can have their children study in the house, and whether they can use a computer and remote learning, and and they don't even need books anymore. Many of them don't need books, but the old generations is used to the idea of children using books. And I never use pen. I barely ever use pen or paper. I just use my PDA. But one of the things that happened with these companies, as you say, the internet, people and some of the most successful companies were created in dorms. Apache was created by a person working in his dorm. WordPress was created like that. Linus Torvalds, I think, was working in a lab or in one of his computers in Finland. He didn't need a big office or one of those cheap companies that he later worked in the United States. He just needed to basically be able to communicate with people over the internet. Even the GNU project was created in MIT, but Stallman had to interact with people via all kinds of mediums before the World Wide Web even existed. He was using Usenet and such things. But I think this notion of creating a physical structure to create something that's basically an exchange of information over the internet. The internet is just a backbone of transmission of messages. So it can be your friends' messages, and it can be profiles of people. It can be searches for literature. You can do that on Google. So it's just basically something that already existed, but the internet just kind of enhances and expands the breadth to which you can reach, so you can access more information more quickly, more easily, and have it unified. Especially when you had the search engines, you no longer had to use portals or to know exactly where you go. You just search for a topic. But if you work in things like research, and if you work on a startup, if you write some code, or if you share code, you don't want to confine people to an office space too much, and you can encourage people to work from home, and you can try to fund that. I mean, one of the things with my work is they allow me to work from home when I want to sometimes, and I find that I can get more done when I'm actually working in isolation for certain things, when I don't have to interact with my bosses and my colleagues. and that's fine. And increasingly, I see lot more people doing that. So it's becoming more of the norm. It's not seen as the exception. And they basically realize that to do research, to do output, to get output, in terms of, in my case, it's code and it's mostly experiments and things that I perform on. I'll probably talk about this later because I have a bit of news about that. If you want to apply for funding, and right now I'm also applying for another grant for my next project, all you have to show is that you can produce things. You don't have to show a physical presence of some building or something, because at the end of the day, even things like Linux, the only headquarters they really have is basically like some office. I suppose it's just a few offices in some building somewhere in Portland. Yeah, so if you look at where lots of code and lots of projects which are being used extensively actually are located, except the data centers, it's usually very decentralized. You can have people working from different companies from home, from different offices across the world, and what the UK is trying to do is to go back to the analog age in a way of trying to put people in the office, in boxes or in cubicles with the amount. Well, it's just the natural way of kind of spending money. We have to give them facilities, but sometimes what you have to give them is the freedom of thought or the freedom of expression and the way to be funded to explore what's interesting to them and not really impose it on them. One of the great things about free software is you don't have specs very often. People just sit there and they code and they hack and they pass things around and they add all kinds of plugins and then put it upstream. With most software companies I know, what's really not inspiring about them is that you have some boss coming on the table, banging some pile of paper, saying implement that. And with my work, because I get to do research, I don't have any of that. I actually look at what's interesting and I decide what I want to implement next and to try. And that tends to produce more new things of value, not just re-implementation of existing things. Yeah, it's.
I completely agree. I mean, it's been around the whole computer world since the 80s. All the creative, all the innovation, some of the most amazing things I ever saw in the Amiga computer were made by lads and lasses sitting in their bedrooms, tapping away on a bit of code and sending messages to each other via bulletin board systems. So yeah, that to me was why I was so bemused by having a central place where you have to try and draw talent to, because if everybody works together,
it employs lots of managers. That's for sure. You get lots of the suit types. The people who are very good at requesting fundings and trying to put a nice proposal and a presentation, probably say PowerPoint presentation about, this is how we're going to bring innovation to the UK. When sometimes just letting people do their thing. And I happen to know quite a few projects when I got involved when they were quite small, and these days they're quite big. One of them is WordPress. I knew these people who were working from their college, as students studying like history or something and working on some project without this guidance from above. And they're the ones that happened to attract a lot of similar people working on these projects and became companies at the end. So, they're not very.
I just look at it that with all the money that if they were to implement this idea, with the money it would cost, it would be far better spent investing in projects that are currently going. I mean, there's a lot of decent projects. One I can't think of the name it's been given, but it brings computing and the internet to low-income households, things like that, and that alongside an open source solution for them, it does good. Is something that everybody should be entitled to, a level of internet access and creativity. And I just keep seeing these ideas and buzzwords and big ideas of skyscrapers and emulations of Silicon Valley, and it seems a lot like a Me Too type attitude where because one country's got something great, we have to have it as well. And I think it's a shame because there are some very, very good causes.
There is also an emulation of, you look at a company like Google. The main thing they have, Google only has like 20-something thousand employees, which would amaze you because if you compare companies with the same capital value. They're lots bigger. I don't know, 100,000, maybe hundreds of thousands of employees, and the main commodity or the main ingredient